So did you know that 85% of all candidates ignore cold outreach attempts? If you've been experiencing this, try this method instead. So imagine this for a second. Your competitor has just hired the exact person that you have been trying to recruit for months. Let that sink in for a moment. You've messaged them, you've DM'd them, you've probably done this several times over, and they never even thought to open up your emails. They did, however, respond to your competitor's messages, probably in a matter of hours. Do you want to know the difference between your messaging and theirs? I'll let you know a little secret. It's probably not what you think. So if you've been trying to hire A-player candidates and you're watching perfect candidates ignore your outreach attempts while somehow miraculously responding and landing in everyone else's business, I'm going to show you exactly why over 85% of all top talent deletes and ignores your messaging without even reading them. And more importantly, I'm going to be revealing the exact messaging framework that gets me over 70% response rates from top talent who have been ignoring recruiters for years. Now, this isn't about just writing better emails. It's about understanding how A players actually decide who to respond to. And the fact is, once you see this process, you can't unsee it. So let's break this down. Let's take a look at the 4 major challenges that you are probably facing when it comes to reaching out to A players. So we'll start with problem number 1. You sound like every other recruiter. Let me take a wild guess at your subject line. It's probably something like exciting opportunity at innovative company, or perfect role for you and your background, or quick question about your career. Do you know what the candidate sees when they read something like that? Copy, paste, delete. Now, here's the truth that nobody wants to admit. Your message screams mass email right from the start. You're using the same template that you've sent to 50, 60, maybe 100 other people. Maybe you've changed the name field. Maybe you've added their current company, something like that, and then you've gone ahead and hit send. I'll tell you what, the candidate knows it and they can smell it. To prove my point, take a look at your last 10 messages. If you can just simply swap the names and send them to different people, then you're not recruiting, you're spamming. Now, I see recruiters sending 200 messages plus a day, getting 3 responses and thinking the problem is they need to send more messages. No, the problem is your messages aren't working. Every single candidate has seen the "I was impressed by your background" email 1,000 times over probably. And they've heard about your fast-growing company and your competitive salary more times than they could probably count. So I'm sorry to say this, it's just white noise at this point. You know, it's the recruitment equivalent to elevator music, and you wonder why no one's responding. That brings me to problem number 2. Your timing is terrible. Now, here's something most recruitment professionals just never even think about. You're reaching out to people at random times in their career, and you're expecting them to just go ahead and drop everything because you have a role. Think about that. Someone just got promoted, they're excited, they're motivated, and you're asking them to leave? Or maybe they just started a new project. They're waist deep in problem-solving mode. The fact is, you're interrupting their life with zero context about whether they're even thinking about a move. That's the same thing as like trying to sell someone a car after they've just left a dealership with one. But here's what kills me. There are perfect moments to reach out to candidates, and here are some of my top signals that wins me opportunities today. For example, 1, right after their company announces layoffs. This is a perfect time to reach out. When their direct manager leaves or departs the company, this is another great time to reach out to a prospect. After a failed product launch is another opportunity. And even still, when they've hit 2 or 3 year mark within the company and they have not received any advancement. Another great signal would be potentially right after a startup or an acquisition has just fallen through. These are known as career inflection points. And these are moments that people actually want to hear from a recruiter, but you're not tracking any of this. You're just blasting messages and hoping that somebody will run into it and be happy to hear from you. I can tell you for a fact, that's not recruitment. That's playing the lottery. That brings me to problem number 3. You're probably using dead channels. LinkedIn InMail, every recruiter on earth is hammering LinkedIn InMail. Do you know what A players call LinkedIn InMail? The spam folder. Most A players that I speak to are getting 20 plus InMails a week. Yours is just adding to the pile. So let's say you move past the InMail and you want to go email. Well, half the time you're just guessing that their email address is correct. And when you do get it right, your message is landing in their spam folder or their promotions inbox. And trust me, nobody checks those folders, especially for career opportunities. Let's talk about cold calling, text messages. Well, let me tell you, without permission, this is not persistence. That's a little creepy. But here's what you're missing. The best candidates aren't checking LinkedIn for opportunities, and they're not refreshing their email hoping that a recruiter's message pops up in the next 1 to 2 minutes. But you will find A players in Slack communities, GitHubs, private Discord servers, Twitter. They're in places that recruiters don't like to go. Now, important distinction, when you do finally find the right channel, don't send novel length messages. They only want 2, maybe 3 sentences max. Also, avoid being too cryptic. They want specificity. They want details. They want to know why you're reaching out. So let's recap for a moment. You're speaking the wrong language in the wrong place at the wrong time. Well, no wonder they're ignoring you. Now, let's talk about problem number 4. This is a big one. You're all take and no give. Let's break that down. Let's take a look at your typical message. I have an exciting role. I'd love to schedule a call. Can you send me your updated resume? When are you available to chat? Can you? You're asking for their time. You're asking for their information. You're asking for their attention. And you're offering what exactly? A great opportunity? That means nothing. Competitive salary? Everyone says that. Amazing culture? Yeah, well, prove it. You're asking busy and successful people to stop what they're doing and pay attention to you, but you haven't given them a single concrete reason why they should care. You haven't given them a specific problem that they need to solve or that you need them to solve. You haven't given them actual numbers about the role. You haven't given any clear picture of what success looks like in this role. It's just vague promises and immediate requests for their time. And I'll tell you what, to an A-player candidate, that's one-sided. And A-player candidates can smell it from a mile away. Okay, enough problems. So here's exactly how I get over 70% of candidate response rates from my cold outreach attempts. Now, I call this the warm trigger method. We're gonna break this down in a few steps. Step number 1, do the actual research. That's right. Before I write a single word, I spend at least 15 minutes learning about the person, not just their LinkedIn. That's for amateurs. I'm checking resources like GitHub, looking at their commits, conference talks they might have given recently, perhaps maybe articles they might have written or co-authored, their company's recent announcements, maybe their team's current challenges, and finally, people that we both know or common connections. So details like that, I'm exploring for trigger events, moments that suggest that they may be open to a move. Look for company news, like did their company just lose a major client? Did their competitor just close a round of funding? Or maybe they just hit their 2-year anniversary and no promotion announcement. For me, this isn't stalking, this is preparation. And it's the difference between spam and outreach that actually works. Now, let's move to step number 2. This is the multi-touch warm-up approach. Here's what nobody does. We make contact before we make contact. Think about that for a second. Week 1, I'll share a LinkedIn post or maybe an article of theirs, something recent, something that they've contributed, and I'll leave a thoughtful comment. Maybe after that, maybe week 2, I'll respond to something that they've shared, commented on, maybe with some actual insights, not just a thumbs up, not a smiley face. And week 3, if I have a mutual connection, I'll reach out to them and I'll have them mention that I may be reaching out in the near future. And by the time my cold message arrives, I'm not cold anymore. They've seen my name, they've seen my face, they recognize me, and even sometimes, and this is the absolute best, they reach out to me before I reach out to them. I've had messages come back, something like, hey, my colleague mentioned that you might have something interesting for me. What's up? So something casual tells me that they're ready for a conversation. And when you get that response, you know you've got. On to step number 3, the message formula. So I want you to use this exact methodology here. When I finally send that message, here's the exact structure that I use that communicates to an A player that I know what I'm doing. Use the subject line, specific achievement caught my attention. Do not use great opportunity. Avoid using quick question. None of that. Go into something like your process optimization caught at DevCon caught my attention. Your team's API redesign is exactly what we need. Now let's move on to the first line. Immediate specific credibility. Something like, I just watched your talk on distributed systems. The approach to handling invalidation was incredibly clever. Something like that. I don't want to see, I was impressed by your background, got something for you, none of that. Here's where you add in your value proposition. We'll break this down into 2 sentences. Specific problem and impact. Use, we're rebuilding payment infrastructure to handle 10 million daily transactions. Your experience scaling Stripe systems is exactly what we need. Now you add in your soft call to action. Would you be open to a 15-minute conversation about this? If not, no worries, but I'd love your thoughts on our approach either way. So something like that. Did you see what I did there? Value, even if they say no. Now, let's move forward to step number 4. We got our message, now it's time for the follow-up. Most recruiters follow up like this. Just checking in. Hey, just circling back. Any thoughts on this? Stop. Just stop. Try this instead. Day 1 follow-up. Add some new information. Hey, I forgot to mention the founder is an ex-Stripe too. You probably know her, something like that. Second, a follow-up temp, you can do something along the lines of adding something valuable. Share. Hey, I saw this article on distributed systems and I remembered your talk about this. I thought you'd find it interesting. Still happy to chat if you're open to it. So you're leaving the door open, but you're providing value. You're sharing some insights here. And follow-up number 3, the honest close. So this is where you just want to say, hey, I'll stop bugging you after this. If you're not interested, I totally understand. But if you do know someone who may be a better fit, I'd appreciate the referral. And listen to this, that last one gets responses 40% of the time. And the reason that I can even ask for the referral is because I've invested in the relationship. I've shown that I've understood their experience and appreciate that. So I'll give you some real life examples and show you exactly how this works in my scenario. So we recently worked with a client and they showed us some of the outreach that they were using. And a generic message was, "Hi, John, I was impressed by your background and I have an exciting senior engineer role at a fast growing startup. Would love to chat about your career, perhaps your goals. When are you available?" That response rate, less than 4%. Now here's our version. "John, your GraphQL implementation that cut PayPal's API response time by 60% is exactly what we need. We're solving the same problem at scale, and API calls are killing our servers. Would you be open to a 15-minute conversation about your approach? I'm happy to share what we've already tried so far." Now, that response rate, nearly 70%. It was over 68% response rate. Do you see the difference? Specific, valuable, and human. Here's another winning message. So a VP of engineering role that a prior recruiter was working on had this role open for nearly 2 years, and it was killing our client. Here's my message. "Sarah, I recently saw that Walmart has just killed your team's project after their acquisition. I know, that's brutal. We're actually building something very similar with actual backing and resources. Would it be worth grabbing a coffee to share what we're doing?" What do you think she did? That's right. She responded in 2 hours. Why? Because I showed I understood her situation. I didn't pretend to know everything and that everything was okay and everything was rosy. I acknowledged her reality. I know what you're thinking. "Jared, this sounds like a ton of work." Yeah, you're right. It is. And it's supposed to be a ton of work, because if getting A players were easy, well, everyone would have A players, but they don't. And that's because most recruiters are just not willing to put in this type of work. And this is what gets results. To be honest, they would rather send more volume, like 200 plus bad messages, rather than fixing it and sending 20 great ones. With that strategy, they would rather blame the candidates than fix their own approach. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So let's break down the math on that for a minute. 200 messages at a 4% response rate, you're getting 8 conversations, versus 20 messages at a 70% response rate, that's over 14 conversations. So less work, better results, higher quality candidates. And remember guys, this isn't about working harder, it's about working smarter. Now, everything I just showed you, the research process, the messaging templates, the follow-up sequencing, if you don't want to do the heavy lifting and you don't want to do their work, you don't have the time to do it, I can implement all of that within your organization for you. Now, if that does sound like the right path for you, go ahead and click the link below in the description. Go ahead and book a free strategy call with me. What we'll do is we'll audit your current outreach and build you a custom system that gets responses from the candidates that you actually want. And if you're not ready for that, no problem. But you should watch the video somewhere on your screen here where I reveal the perfect interview process that closes A player candidates, because getting them to respond is only step 1. So I'll leave you with this. Stop spraying, start aiming, and you will start to win real A player candidates. Thanks.